The United States is threatening tariffs on buyers of Russian oil. But here's the twist. While India and others face penalties, China, Russia's biggest customer, has been spared. Why is Washington holding back on Beijing? And what does it mean for the global balance of power? To understand what's happening today, we need to look at three intersecting stories: the war in Ukraine, U.S. sanctions on Russia, and the long-running trade battles between Washington and Beijing. When Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine, Western governments responded with unprecedented sanctions, cutting Moscow off from global banks, restricting technology exports, and targeting its energy sector. But oil and gas remain Russia's economic lifeline. Despite sanctions, Moscow has kept revenues flowing by selling crude to major buyers, most notably India and China. For Washington, this is a problem. How do you punish Russia without driving a wedge between allies or destabilizing global energy markets? At the same time, the U.S. has been locked in a separate struggle with China. Years of disputes over tariffs, intellectual property, and technology restrictions have strained relations. China is both America's biggest trading partner and its top strategic rival. Any escalation in tariffs could trigger retaliation, higher prices, and further supply chain shocks. So when China buys discounted Russian oil, Washington faces a dilemma: crack down and risk a trade war, or hold back and risk undermining sanctions. Consider this. Earlier this year, the U.S. imposed tariffs on India for continuing to purchase Russian crude. Yet China, by far Russia's largest energy buyer, has been exempt. Why? Officials say the stakes are simply higher. Tariffs on India sting, but tariffs on China could unravel fragile trade talks, disrupt global markets, and risk escalation between two superpowers already competing on multiple fronts. This is the balancing act. On one front, the U.S. is trying to weaken Russia's war machine. On the other, it's managing a tense and delicate relationship with China. And for the Biden administration, these two priorities can clash. Push too hard on China, and you may lose ground on trade. Go too soft, and Russia finds a backdoor to keep funding its war. In short, today's restraint on China isn't about ignoring Russia's actions. It's about managing a fragile web of global power struggles, where every decision has ripple effects across diplomacy, economics, and security. Officials say the White House is treading carefully. Tariffs on China right now could derail sensitive trade talks, spook markets, and worsen inflation at home. Instead, Washington has targeted smaller economies, like India, for continuing Russian oil imports, while holding fire on Beijing. But not everyone agrees with this cautious approach. NATO allies, especially France and Germany, are urging the U.S. to be tougher, arguing that inconsistent penalties weaken the sanctions regime. For them, sparing China sends a mixed message: one rule for smaller nations, another for great powers. This balancing act comes with risks. China may interpret us restraint as a sign of weakness. Russia could exploit loopholes, using so-called shadow fleets and alternative banking systems to keep oil revenues flowing. And without China on board, sanctions may fail to cripple Moscow's war economy. So what happens next? Three scenarios are on the table. The U.S. continues its balancing act, hoping trade talks with China bring concessions. If talks collapse, tariffs on Beijing could follow, escalating tensions dramatically. Or, under pressure from allies, Washington may be forced into a tougher, coordinated sanctions regime. Can the U.S. punish Russia without alienating China? Or is this balancing act destined to tip on? Thing is clear, Washington's next move will reshape not just trade policy, but the future of global power.